It's what, July 25th, 2002, and here we're sitting with Helen and Margie and Phyllis and Eleanor. We're going, what, from what, oldest to young?
Old to young, yeah.
Old to young, so.
Old, yes.
I think, I don't know, I was thinking maybe the best way to start would be, I think we need some songs.
Oh, you got the wrong side of the family. Not the end.
All right, well, we'll end with the Walsh County Jail song. So,
What, are you and Phyllis gonna sing that?
no, I think just Phyllis. She's got the honors there. Debbie, if I could have you be the picture holder just in a sec. All right, right now we're looking at pictures of Grandpa Orsund's parents. And I'm forgetting the names, but his dad's name was what?
Ellie Peterson.
Ole Peterson, and then Annie, was it?
Anna, Eric's daughter.
Anna, Eric's daughter. And I think on the back, Debbie, if you can turn them around, it says that Ole was, yeah, hold that. Ole Peterson later changed his name to Orsund and was born in 1855 in Norway. And then Annie, Eric's daughter, Orsund, was married to, well, Ole, obviously. She was born in 1857 in Norway. That's good. Turn them around again, maybe. I don't know, were Grandpa's parents, did they live here in America?
No.
Okay.
No, I remember during the war, when the war was on, Daddy got information that his mother had died.
World War
Is that
II
right?
then.
Yeah, I think it was 1943, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And I don't know how old she was. 43. Figure it out, I can't.
And so Grandpa had immigrated to America, and then had he gone back to Norway to visit it? He never got back there, but he called there, I remember. Okay. All right. Do you remember any stories? Did he ever talk about, it would be your grandparents then, anything that any of you can remember? Or
I don't remember.
from Norway?
I don't ever remember Daddy talking about
I don't remember him talking about his parents, but I remember him telling about what he did, you know, in his homeland. I remember how he always told us how he took his lunch to school in this Carol syrup pail.
Oh, I did
Maybe
that
not
too.
Carol, but, you know, yeah, we did the same thing, but I remember him telling me about that. And I remember Sunday mornings, Eleanor, when we were little, I can remember anyhow waiting to hear Mom out in the kitchen getting the coffee ready, and then we'd go jump into bed with Daddy and he'd tell us stories about life back in Norway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did tell us stories, but I don't remember any of them.
I just remember
I always
about
thought he was just making them up.
and lard sandwiches.
Oh, he had hard sandwiches.
Yeah, but they were good school, and we went to school there.
Yeah.
Sarah.
And then he always said when they ate their lefse, they rolled their whole meal in, you know, their lefse.
So they were just ahead of time then in the wrapped sandwiches.
Yeah, right.
It
They
was
made
just,
their lefse a lot thicker too.
Oh, yeah.
oh, really?
And, yeah.
Well, it would have to
And
be
here we
thick to
are.
hold a whole dinner.
Yeah.
Well, what are we
They
trying
were-
to get it so thin for them?
That's, well,
Right
I
now,
remember
right now, do
Sonova,
the other one, that's what you're trying
I
to do.
worked with this Norwegian lady and she said, only the Americans make their lefse thin. She said, I don't know why, just to show each other how thin they could get it without falling apart or
Well,
something.
Phyllis, remember when we
Get
were
it
there?
rolled up.
You know, the
They had
lefse
two
we...
different kinds,
Yes.
and one they called a flatbread or something. That was the thinner stuff.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the lefse was thick.
Yeah, and it
And
wasn't
I
that
thought
good.
ours was much
It wasn't
better.
good?
Oh, no.
It
nothing to
didn't
write
have
home
any
about.
taste, I didn't think.
Did they put butter on it and sugar like we do, or?
I don't even remember. Remember that thing, well, Mary Jo bought one of those
Yes.
with a hand, it had a handle, you know, instead of our rolling pin. It was only about so wide, long, Yeah, it had a handle, and it, well, I remember we bought one, Mary Jo and I, but I could never
Yeah,
make
but
it
they
work.
only made them about this big.
Yeah.
You know, the
well,
ones
you-
I had.
it's
They
just-
made it more like, just more like a side of a pancake then.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
a tortilla,
Yeah.
you know, but they were thick.
There was
I
a,
just didn't think they had the taste that ours.
Debbie, there's that newspaper clipping down there. There was a story in the Grafton paper in September 23rd, 1986. Grandma was in the rest home, and Grandma Orsund, your mother, and at the end it said that everyone liked Mrs. Orsund's lesson, so we leave you with her recipe. 3 cups of rice potatoes, red Pontiacs, 5 tablespoons of Crisco margarine, 2 tablespoons of cream, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 cup of flour, but it doesn't tell you what to do after that.
Yeah. Everybody's supposed to know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the recipe I still use.
Is that right?
Mhm.
One of the things, I remember Grandma talking about this, but one of the things, it says she was born in a log cabin at Mant. In April 8th, 1894, her parents, Allert and Olava, she was in her 6th year of school when her father said she had to stay home and help on the farm. And then she worked hard, and she loved Daisy and Barney the best of the 9 horses that she worked with in the fields. Do you remember her talk? I remember her telling me about Barney, and
I don't remember that.
maybe it was when, you know, she was in the home and her mind was
Yeah, it
going.
was-
I don't even remember that article in the paper.
Well, then I'll read more of it. It said
Oh, I
Peter
got that clipping from that paper.
Yeah.
Peter Orsund came from Norway working on the neighbor's farm. They met and were married November 4th, 1913 at the courthouse in Grafton. Their means of transportation was the old gray mare pulling the wagon. Annie remembers how the horse became frightened and kicked up when the train went by. After their wedding ceremony, they had their pictures taken at the Rindal studio and then traveled to the farm 12 miles west. They worked at the Copperwood Dairy Farm for 7 years. Many of their years together were spent working on different farms, and they settled in Nash in the early 1940s. I hadn't remembered this before. It says Mrs. Brandt, the midwife, delivered 11 children at their home. Do any of you remember anything about?
Yeah, they talked about that. That was, wasn't she, was she a Larson?
Well, I think so.
Was that Connie's mother?
Yeah, isn't that the one?
But she
that-
didn't deliver 11 children, that's wrong. Because I
Okay.
was born in the hospital.
So was I.
So was I.
Okay. Well, we're correcting history here then.
But I remember Gladys talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
her.
well, that's right.
What, you mean that was Mabel Brandt?
Well, I don't know, she just said it Mrs. Brandt, and I just figured that was who it was.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I know where I would be talking about where and he had to run and get somebody when, was that when Gladys was born then on the farm or something?
Yeah, I can remember him talking about. Oh, I suppose he went to get Grandpa.
You see, they lived someplace up at the, I don't think it was right on the place where Richie Clemenson lives. I wonder if they weren't on a place a little bit further north at that
because
time.
Gladys always talked about Joanne Walston.
Yeah, Joanne Walston, you see, they went over to get us, or Joanne Walston,
Yeah.
over to Walston.
Yeah, I remember her talking about Joanne Walston.
I remember asking Mom, I said, what'd you and Daddy do when you went out on dates? She looked at me and she said it was none of your business.
Did you ask what you done then?
No, did she dare?
It says that Grandma remembered the home dances when they mostly watched them dance.
Oh, you know, I can vaguely remember those dances
Oh,
that
yeah.
they had out at the farm, because I remember trying to get into bed, and my God, there was jackets piled this high, you know, on the bed.
Sure. Oh, all the
And I
girls
think
out
the
there.
Hovey brothers were there playing their squeeze box and guitar, and
Then you say, when we were small, we'd get tired, so we'd be laying in the bed before we were playing.
Were you tired or what?
Well, we didn't dance at that time when you were that high, but no, you see, they'd have suppers around. Well, you'd pull the rugs up from the floor then, if there was a rug there. It was a rule, pretty fair, good hardwood floors in most of the houses. And they'd take, if there was a rug there, they'd take it up. Otherwise, they wouldn't, and sprinkle little cornstarch on there.
Because I can remember going to with Buster's mother out to this Acton place, and there was coats, like you said, just piled all, and they'd bring the kids and the babies in the buggies and everything.
What were you and Buster doing out there?
Well, we'd take his mother out there.
Oh. You wouldn't go dancing?
Oh, no.
No.
We just watched.
Then it says that they would hitch up the horses and go Julebakken at Christmas time.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody remember Julebakken?
Oh, yeah, I
Oh, yeah.
remember them
I
coming.
remember
Yeah,
you
the other
walking with
probably
your
was-
mom and dad, and
Oh, yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
No, well, let's hear it. You-
But,
Millard will tell.
we come to this place here, you know, when Berkeys were living here.
Oh, here?
Yeah, that's the night Clifford Berg and Hazelor went to see.
Oh.
And this is, let's go after Herman. It was a them. They were having a Christmas dinner in the evening, you know, they had some company. Oh, how many of us were tramping around here.
What do you mean tramping around in the house?
Well, sure, we had our costumes on. We could see them, but they couldn't see what was behind the costume.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, they
didn't
dress up
necessarily,
like-
I think I had ladies' clothes on.
Oh, yeah. The funniest part I remember about that, I have to tell this.
Yes.
But our last stop, I think, when I went with your mother and
You
dad.
went to?
Oh, sure, Ivor and Pearl and Lucy and I.
But our place again,
Well, yeah, because Mom and Dad were out there babysitting your
Yeah.
kids. I think Wayne was a baby at the time. But one of the last places we stopped was Millard Torkelson's.
Oh.
And I remember they had a train set up on the floor, and I could still see Gladys sitting down there playing with that train. Oh, golly, it was funny.
Yeah, but when she got home, she wasn't playing with
No,
the
she wasn't. She wasn't very well. Yeah.
She was talking, corn oil was wet too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Building
That's
corn.
what
Oh,
I
yeah.
corn oil and Clifford Berg off. She was going to change the riverboats when she got home.
Oh, boy.
So
Well,
is that the one you were alluding to, Phyllis? When you?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
And Mom was pretty happy, huh?
Yeah. Playing with that train.
Just
I
like
Got
can
me
still
into
see
that
that.
home.
Poor
Bruce
him,
stuff
bro.
or
I
something.
mean,
Did she ever go again?
I don't know. I never did. I don't know how Lucy and I got mixed up with that.
I know once,
They probably were babysitting or.
this was another time when we went to Ullamucking, that old Samson truck we had, that had a wagon box on behind. I wish I had a truck like that. I can't even explain it to you. There was a cab over, you know. But we went to time, and it was a nice evening. I know we picked up a bunch around home there. We drove up to Tweeton's here, up Eastern Gary's here. And of course, there was a couple other outfits too along. And of course they wanted to dance over there then. Well, I know we weren't that big, but I know I was driving one of that Samson truck. And of course we had some other ones. Of course when they got there, then they had to go into town and get some beer, of course, and they brought it out. But we didn't get to stay too long. More or less invited us to go again.
Oofta.
Yeah.
I think most of you have seen that video that we got off some of the old home movies, and there's a picture on there of Grandma and Grandpa cutting potatoes.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Grandma, I remember her laughing a lot. Do you remember? I mean, she was kind of giggling on the tape. Is
Yeah,
that?
Yeah.
She always was kind of a happy person.
Yeah.
Really. She was related to Alfred Nelson, you know.
Okay, now we don't know what that means.
Do you know
So
what Alfred Nelson means? That's her relative, and
That'd be
if
Lolly's.
you ever ask Wally Orsund, then he'll laugh just like him, so talk to him tomorrow.
Alfred Nelson laughed all the time.
Was Alfred Lolly, Alfred's dad?
Dad,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, I glad he's telling me about Alfred, you know. This how he laughed and that. This was before we were married, and it was, I guess it was the 4th of July dance at Park River, it's the City Hall. Anyway, this one guy he comes on his hill hall laughing. I asked him, was that Alfred Nelson? Yeah, that was him.
I remember going to their place. I just loved to go there because he was so much fun to listen to, you know. And we just walk in the house and the tears would be rolling down his cheeks. Oh, I just loved
We're
it.
really funny to look at.
Ollie gets like that too.
That
Was
was
he? Yes.
Lolly was over Maryland and George, you know.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, you could have, maybe you were there that day, you know, just telling about her dad. He had passed away then, you know.
Yeah.
And I know, it was about, you know, passing away, and then just, I wonder what Dad is doing now. Just, you see, he worked for the railroad,
Uh-huh.
and worked in the roundhouse there and shoveling coal for the tenders and the engines, you know. I wonder if Dad is still shoveling coal.
Then she laughed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, didn't they bury him with his sword from World War I in his coffin?
I don't know, I didn't know.
Or helmet or something, I think they did.
Now, is he related?
He was Mom's first cousin.
Cousin.
Okay. So that's maybe some of that happy,
Yeah, it passes down
Yeah.
through the generations.
because Debbie said how the relatives up here are all pretty happy-going and
Yeah.
easygoing.
I think
And
some I do. Compared to my family, oh yeah.
It's a good thing she said that, huh?
that's
We're
right.
going to be around us sometime.
All right, let me just stop. Yeah. I'm looking at a picture here. It looks like pretty happy times, too. Maybe you could take it over to Helen and then Margie, have them pass it around. Who is on that picture then, Helen?
Well, there's Mom and Pearl. Oh, gosh, I think that's Lucy. I've never seen this picture. That could be me, I don't know.
What do you think? Pass it on there. What do you think's going on there?
Oh gosh, it looked like we got a big kettle. We probably gonna make lefse or something. Who's this right here? This
This is Gladys. That's
not Gladys.
Who is it then? It is too.
Okay.
Maybe we were gonna make mush.
That's Lucy and that's either me or Phyllis.
All right, keep it going here. We'll see if we can get them identified.
See
So
how
I put my glasses on so I can see.
gracious. Mom and Pearl.
Oh, that's me. I can tell my hairdo.
That's Lucy.
Oh, is it?
That's Lucy.
One is
Yes.
Lucy.
That
That
was
one's
Lucy.
This
Lucy.
is Gladys on the end.
You think so?
Yes.
Well, who's the next one then?
I don't know, I don't think she
don't know.
belongs to us.
Well, I don't.
I don't think so,
Gladys.
really. Phyllis, I think that's you.
Yeah, I
You
do
think
too.
so?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have long hair. Where was that taken?
I don't know, no, I don't think that's you. You got too long a face. I don't know who that is.
So you're not sure what's going on,
No.
other than
No,
maybe
I
a lefse making
Never
party.
seen that.
Well, there's a big kettle there.
Someone has an apron on. Gladys has an apron on.
Do you think that's Gladys?
Yes,
Oh,
Yes,
I
on the
didn't
end.
think so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
No, I guess I lost their stuff.
yes, that's Gladys. And that's Lucy.
Let me see if
Perhaps,
it's,
I'm
let me
not sure.
see if I can tell if it's me or
I'm not sure.
hog it so much.
Oh,
That's
you-
taken in Nash, that south window and Mom. No?
Gladys is out on the farm.
Sometimes it looks like that Mrs. Hagen, Mike's my wife. Isn't
I
it?
don't know. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I don't think it's Phyllis.
Debbie,
This is
can you
at
get it in?
Gladys's house, yes. That north window in their kitchen.
When Helen's done there, I'll have
Okay.
Debbie get it again. We'll get it on the video.
Maybe it was one of those picnics we were at.
I don't know.
Like Mike's, you know, 'cause
All right, we're gonna
Hagen's were
just
there.
put it here
Stuff.
again.
It's the kitchen crew anyhow.
Yeah, It looks like that.
Not
You
that
haven't
one.
even seen
I
that.
Okay.
know it. Well, Mark, what,
Okay,
when
right.
she came here, Daddy wasn't even living.
He was too.
He said, is
Uh,
that
Margie.
All right, right now we're looking at a picture of
Margie.
Marit
Yes.
Orsund. Debbie, can I have you take that over to them?
Twice, I think, wasn't
She
And
came when Daddy was living.
she?
Yes, this is taken out at Nash
I thought Daddy was.
in 65.
I think she came twice, Mommy.
Yeah, that's not it.
and so that was his sister who lived
This is
in
Margaret all
Norway?
by herself, yes, but I thought you said she was sitting with Daddy.
No, I asked if that was
Well,
his.
then I'm right, see?
You're right.
Well, because when Margaret came, Daddy wasn't living. Daddy
was.
died.
I think you're right, Margie.
Daddy died in '62 when Carrie with Mary Jo was.
She was here at one
Carrie was
time
a
when
baby.
Daddy was living.
Unless she
No, she
came
wasn't.
twice.
No, she wasn't.
I remember
Now quit your
yeah,
fighting,
I'm
girls.
not gonna argue.
I'm right, I know I'm right.
She's always
I think
right,
I have
so-
to agree with you, unless she came twice.
No,
Those
she
two
never
are
came
always
twice.
right, they know.
Because after that, then Wally and I went to Norway a few years after that, about 3 years later. I know she wasn't, because she would keep asking Mom about Daddy and where they lived and if we always had enough food to eat. She was just really curious.
Here, let's put it on here.
I remember I could, you know, she talked to me in Norwegian and I could tell, we aren't talking Norwegian. We're talking this slang Norwegian.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That all,
In
yeah.
a way.
So full of BS. I didn't know what he was telling everybody in Norway. Oh, Lord.
Were you and Wally, Margie, the first ones to go
Yeah,
to Norway, and when was that?
Well, the year is when they walked on the moon. What was that, 68?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And so who did you see when you were over there?
everybody. Marit and Ellen, Daddy's old sister was still living, Ellen.
Ellen?
Ellen, E-L-L-E-N. And we went and visited an old girlfriend of Daddy's. We were on our way to visit Ellen, Daddy's sister, from Marit's house. And she said, well, lives here. She used to be crazy about Pete, you know. So we went in and we visited with her for a little while.
What was
I got
her
a
name?
picture of her, you know.
Do you remember anything she said, or?
No, it was all in Norwegian.
Oh, okay.
I could understand a few words, but
Did Wally tell them that he was the first man on the moon?
they thought he was the king of Norway.
Al always said when Al and B went to Norway, he said, oh, Christ, he said, all they talked about was volley this and volley that. It was just like the second coming of Christ, he said. We just thought he was the Lord.
Mrs. Alice Stanley was over there, and she said, we were trying to talk Norwegian to the chambermaids. The last time one chambermaid spoke up, why don't you talk English so we can all understand each other?
I
So
remember
they started talking English.
we took a bus,
See, that's a-
Marit and Wally and I, and we went up
That's a
to,
command language, isn't it?
what's that
English
town
over
further
in
north
Norway.
of, in Norway?
I think they're supposed to learn
Oh,
that.
I can't remember. It was a big seaport. Oh, what is it?
What?
Stavanger?
No,
What?
Trondheim.
Trondheim. We went up to Trondheim.
You and Wally now?
And Marit. And because Wally was interested in that because he said during the war, he was stationed there with the Navy and they were watching, there was supposedly a submarine, you know, German sub in the water there.
I think that's Christensen.
No, it was
I don't think Trondheim was on the
wasn't
water.
Trondheim.
Wally was stationed near Christensen.
No, it's Trondheim.
Oh, well, I look at the map, Margaret, to find that out. Go ahead, tell your story.
Well, I know I'm right.
Yeah.
And then we visited some distant relatives of Daddy's there, and we went to their house, and I think we stayed overnight. And we went on a bus trip all around the city. And in the meantime, we had gone to a fish market, and Wally and I bought fish, salmon, because the ladies were going to buy salmon. They thought it was so dear, you know, that's expensive. So I said to Wally, let's buy this. So we bought some, and the lady fixed it while we were on taking another trip. There was a couple ladies. Oh, God, it was good. Ooh. And that lady gave me a little tiny doily. that was handmade, you know, crocheted, just really fine. I still have that. Beautiful lady, beautiful.
So who was the lady?
I don't remember her name, just some distant relative
Oh.
of Dad's. So,
And then who else? Mom went to Norway with
Phyllis
Mary
and
Jo
I
and
Mary
Phyllis
Jo.
and Helen, okay. And when was that?
I think it was 77, wasn't it?
I think so.
And so what do you remember about that trip?
Oh, that was
Sitting
in
in
some
some-
place, where was it? We were sitting in some park counting our money to see if we
We,
had enough to
yeah,
get a hotel room, so.
we went back to Oslo earlier than we had planned for
Yeah.
the relatives. So
Why?
then, well, we just felt that it was time for us to leave.
Yeah.
You know, we'd been there
We'd been
for
there
over
a
2
long
weeks,
time,
and
yeah.
you know,
They were getting
after a
tired.
few days, you begin to smell.
Yeah,
And, yeah, we just felt that
Yeah.
it was time to leave, and so we went back, and so we got off the train, and we took a cab to this hotel, and it was only a block away. And then we wanted, well, we got our rooms, we went up the elevator, and I remember it was just a, wooden elevator, it was kinda scary going up, and we got there, and there wasn't even a bathroom in the room.
and we asked for adjoining rooms.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't know what that was.
Well, Helen said, I'm not staying here. I've got
Oh.
my Visa card with. So we go down and we sit on the lawn of this hotel and count our money to see if we could afford to stay
Oh, but some
at
of
the
them,
Scandinavian
Yeah,
again. We
yeah.
had stayed there for a couple of days before. So then we go to the Scandinavian, and Helen asked for adjoining rooms. So we go up to the 11th floor. Well, the rooms are side by side, but they're not adjoining.
yeah, they didn't know what adjoining meant.
She and
I
Mary
think we
Jo
could
went
draw a
down and
picture.
they drew a picture to show us. So then we moved down to the 7th floor and got
So
our
they did
adjoining
have
rooms.
an adjoining room.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we,
but-
just to save money, we went out and bought cheese and crackers
Yeah.
and things like that to lunch on, so we wouldn't have to eat out too much.
Yeah, the picnic then.
Yeah, we had a fun time.
Did you have to use your visa?
I don't even remember. I suppose we did, I don't know.
So,
That's a long time
No,
ago.
I came home with a lot of money, I remember.
Well, I think we did, we all
Because
did.
there wasn't that much stuff to
No.
buy there,
You
you
were
know.
just scared you were gonna go broke, so you sit.
Probably. I know we'd stop often and count our money.
Yeah.
Good thing they weren't watching you.
Well,
Talk
no,
to
we
her.
always went by ourselves anyway. 'Cause I remember, I didn't, if it was some little park or something, we were out for a walk.
Well, that was the King's Park, because we were right near the King's Castle.
That's right. So then we sat there and we counted our money again. We were real conservative.
which the relatives, so that was, you were there in 68, Margie, and then you guys were there 9 years later.
Mhm.
Still a lot of relatives around. What part of Norway is that? I mean, where our relatives are.
Sundalsura. It's kind of
Sundalsura?
north central.
North, yeah.
North central Norway.
So what, up
Northwest.
halfway up the country or more?
I
or-
would say halfway. It was a
Further-
6-hour
further
train
west.
ride from Oslo.
Wow.
Well, who was that lady in Oslo now? Was that Early Nelson's sister?
Half sister or something like that, I think.
Because
What
we
was-
went to
what was
see
her
her,
name?
Ruth.
Mhm.
Ruth Aussie, I think.
Yeah, and now she talked different, she spoke Norwegian only, and she talked so fast we could hardly, well, we
Miller,
couldn't really
That's the one
understand
who
her.
Gladys got a letter from.
Yeah.
The one that you
Oh,
showed
okay,
me.
okay, yeah.
I never got that deciphered yet because Kurt, the
Oh,
guy's,
I see,
he isn't
right,
there, he
yeah.
said, now.
But see, there's different dialects.
Yeah, and
Oh,
see,
yeah.
they talk so fast there in Oslo.
Oslo was
Oh,
really
and then it
different,
was-
but Gladys could make out.
Oh, yeah, Gladys could
converse
understand it.
With
You
Ruth
see,
real well.
So, they'd come here, they'd talk about this Norwegians, you're telemarking. Eva Stahl, and then, well, there's different, dialects,
They're all different,
yeah.
yeah. Because where we were
Throw
at our
name.
cousins, they thought, at Oslo, the people were really snobbish people,
Oh,
and,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Well,
they
that's
didn't,
something.
they didn't
That's
even
something
wanna
like
talk
just
about
really
them.
good Chinese.
You know, they
Yeah,
figured they
yeah.
were so much better than they
were
were.
singing.
Wow.
But
Interesting.
I can't even speak it.
All right,
Yeah.
now we just heard off tape, but now we're coming back on about when they were in Norway and killed the king.
Yeah. We, all of us girls were invited to Olena's house.
Yeah.
Who's Olena?
Olena's
cousin.
one of our cousins. And so, I think Mary Jo drove the car, didn't she? Yeah. And we went to Olena's for supper and we had salmon. It was just
Oh.
delicious. The men were working, so it was just us girls, us four, and then our three cousins.
Yeah.
So then after we ate, then they come out with this jug of
Liqueur.
liqueur.
Yeah.
And they passed it around, you know, we had our tiny little glasses.
Is that alcohol?
No, it
No.
was just a liqueur.
Oh,
It
that's
was kind of neat, you know, because we all got kind of silly. Pretty soon Helen was talking Norwegian, the Norwegian cousins were talking English. We played Polish poker.
What's one poker?
Polish poker, that was some game that Helen, with
Norwegian
cards.
poker.
And then then somebody remembered it was the king's birthday, so every time they passed the liqueur around, you know, we toast the king. We got him up to 85. You know, there we were. Someone said, "Oh, I dare no." He is dead now. Oh golly, yeah, 3:30 in the morning. Busta and I were going down the road, singing and walking home. The rest of them drove.
And they
in the car.
walked all over.
Well, it was daylight all the time.
Oh, I know. We walk home at 4 o'clock in the morning and we were out fishing.
Of course, I can sing What a Beautiful Morning.
Oh.
That was,
Then, you know, when we'd leave our homes, when we'd go someplace
Yes.
from the relatives, they'd always lock the doors, you know, lock the doors. But geez, their windows didn't have screens on or anything. The windows were always open because your comforter was hanging
Yeah,
out
they
to
took the
air.
comforter out
We
to
locked
air.
the doors.
But be sure to
But
lock
the
the
windows
door
were
now, they
wide
say.
open.
They air the comforters that they
Well, yeah,
used
they-
on their bed
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they always open the window and put them out.
Hung them over the windows.
Yeah.
every day.
But be sure to close the door, lock
Lock the
the door.
doors.
Oh, that was funny.
Try that in Vegas.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
the have
remember
company.
Yeah, that's for
I
sure.
I had this raincoat when I went over there to Norway. And it was kind of rainy, you know. And then I remember Mara telling me, oof, da, den lukte så färt, she said. You know, and I said, what?
does that
And then she said, in Norwegian, she said it smelled like cat pee.
Oh,
It was that material. She wouldn't let me hang the coat in the house. She hung it outside in the porch, you know. Yeah, it did. It had a funny
I
smell
suppose it
to
got
it.
when it got wet.
I suppose. I should say.
I had fun with Mart. I just enjoyed that so much.
Was she younger than Grandpa?
She
Or?
was the youngest in the family. She was born in 1900, I think. Yeah, 1900.
Wow. Huh. Has anybody? You went with Wally,
Wally.
and then has anybody else been over there? or-
Lawrence went,
Lawrence has
didn't he?
been a couple times,
Yeah.
hasn't
Yeah,
And
Lawrence went.
Kirk has been over there, my son.
Okay.
And
Did
he's
Lawrence
there
go
with the
along?
relatives.
Lawrence
Lawrence
went with Wally and
Yeah,
Jewel.
Lawrence and
And Jewel, yeah.
Jewel.
And then Al and Bee were there.
Oh, yeah, that's
They were
right.
there before we were, I think.
Mhm.
weren't they?
Seems to me Judy and them are going.
Well, Bee's,
Well, they talked about that 2-3 years ago.
Bee must have got along pretty good over there.
Well, yeah, because remember all the stuff she had, and we said, well, remember when
Well,
we
don't
went?
say it on tape.
No, that's okay. She'll never hear it. so.
Anyway, you
Yeah,
know,
but somebody else might.
she just took it. You know, there was no way that, remember they watched us like
Oh, yeah.
hawks out
When we
were
went,
up
when
there.
we went to Aunt Ellen's house, was it?
Yes.
They took
Up
us up
in
in
the
the
attic.
attic and they had all this, the first thing I saw was this great big rose mall trunk that
Yeah.
said Helga on it. That was
Yes,
Dad's sister who came to the United States
that
with
lived
him.
in Minneapolis.
And they had all these old antiques, you know, but they watched us.
Oh, they just
Oh, I just had to leave, I just had to
And
get out
we
there.
sat over there and we all had to sit around. I know Wally and I went too.
Oh,
You know,
oh,
God, we
they-
couldn't get near it.
No, but Beatrice come home with stuff that was up there. 'Cause we remember?
I
We
do
said,
know.
well, how did you get that? And then she just giggled, well, you know. She wouldn't really say, but she had to just taken it, cause you
Beatrice is the
couldn't
one,
get
you know,
close to stuff.
this is getting off track, but this will probably explain it. She's the one that, if she needed a special dress for some special occasion, she would go supposedly buy it, and she'd wear it to the special occasion, and then she'd return it.
I guess she hasn't been alone on that.
No, but she did that all the time.
So what do you remember about Alvin? What comes to mind when you think of Alvin?
Brother
I'll
Al?
tell you what comes to mind, and I told him this in probably his last year, and he said, God, I didn't know I was so mean. And I said, well, you weren't mean, but, remember Phyllis, you were with me, I was out at the lake with Phyllis, and then we went in, she and Mike and I went into Pelican, and so we stopped and visited Al and Darlene. And I don't know, we were just talking, and I said, well, I could, yes, see? Because I said, well, Al, you know, was always, you know, his posture was just
Yeah.
perfect, you know, and I tried to have good posture. And I said, well, Al, I can thank you for that, because I said, I can remember going over to your place after you and Bea were married, you know, and I'd sit down at the table, and if I sat like this, get your elbow off the table, he'd say, and sit up straight, you know.
Are you tired?
Yeah. And he said, God, I didn't know I was that mean. And I said, well, you weren't mean, you just told me to sit up straight. So
I know,
Yeah.
we lived in Nash, next to the elevator in that little house. Elvin would walk over many times during the day and he'd say, God, you look like a bunch of birds in the window, get out of the window.
I can remember him saying that.
Remember that?
Yeah, that was the only exciting thing happening, was watching the cars go by.
Let me stop.
Yeah.
Remember Alvin had the, what did they call it, the Ponderosa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His little cabin in the woods.
Still there.
So Alvin was the oldest, and then it was Mom, Gladys. What do you remember of any silly stories about her? That come. I remember her telling us, and this was probably when Debbie and I were home a couple years ago, and she told the story, and some of you hadn't heard it. She said she and Alvin would lay up somewhere and then
yeah.
spit
Oh,
down.
down the register.
Yeah.
And where was
Yeah.
where? And so where were they laying when they did that? Was it at home?
Lay upstairs, you see, and spit
Yeah.
down.
But at their home then.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
think
'cause
that's
It was
gonna
when
be,
Mom and
Those
Dad
vents
had
were in the
parties,
floor,
wasn't it?
that could have been where Tippin lived, or
Oh, yeah, I
on
remember
that place.
that when they were out at the farm place, and Gladys was babysitting us, and she sent us all up to bed, and Arnie Clemenson was there and stuff, and they'd all had a few drinks, and they were making buns, and they were rolling, and they'd throw them up, and then catch them in the bed. We laid on the floor.
Wasn't that
We
Isabel
laid,
Dumps
yeah, we laid on the floor and watched through
through the register?
but they'd roll them in the bed. Do you remember that? I remember you Phyllis.
Didn't some turkeys die?
Oh, yeah, they wrung the necks of the turkeys.
What was that? They wrung the necks of the turkey.
Mom raised some turkeys then during the summer.
Her Isabel was.
You know, they're very delicate to raise, I think, and I think a lot of them drowned. I don't know what they did.
They
They
died.
died.
Yeah, they died.
Probably fed them the buns.
But I can still see those buns flying out, and they pushed the pan over to
And
catch them.
who was doing that then? Mom?
And
And
Isabel. And I remember Arnie Clemenson was there, but I can't remember anyone else. I suppose we couldn't see everybody because we had our heads in the register
She
stairs.
told me, you know, that Alvin would tell her, You know, he was the oldest, Jason
Yeah.
next. It was something they wanted that he told her, but he'd say, "Oh, no, and Green who supported it, no, but you cried, you
Yeah.
did it." He had her crying. He had her crying.
Oh, gosh. Oh, you're just lucky you're here. God, she could have wronged her neck.
Mom and Daddy went to Duluth at that time.
Yeah, and she was babysitting.
Must have took all day to drive then.
So that was the same register you were looking down that Shane Alvin probably spit down.
Was very.
Yeah.
So was I
Oh,
born then?
oh,
I can't remember
I
kitchen
can
floor.
remember, being out at the farm, and I think we lived there till I was 5.
Oh, I remember when Elmer was a baby, Mom would go out to the barn and help Daddy, and we'd take her out of this basket or a dresser drawer, whatever she was laying in. Well, that's what they, you know, put, and then we'd walk as fast as we could back and forth. And then we'd watch, somebody would watch in the window and tell us when Mom was coming so we could put her
I suppose I had to watch. I could see watching. But Helen did it all the fun.
Because didn't Mom tell you guys not to pick me up and spoil me?
Yes. As soon as Mom would leave, we'd get her up and we'd walk as fast as we could.
I was-
You were
Phyllis
either
said
in a
that's why I
basket.
walk so fast.
You were either in a basket or in a dresser drawer, I don't know.
One thing I remember about being out at the farm, you know, there was so darn many of us on Saturday nights when it was time to go to Grafton. We had to, you know, some had to stay home and some got to
Yeah.
go. We took turns.
Suppose Margie
I
had to
can
stay
remember
home
one,
always.
no, I can remember one time I stayed home, Wally was there, and this one Groven boy was there, and he was the guy with the
Oh, that was
ears that
Harlan.
stuck up. I was so scared of him. I remember Wally went out to the barn to check his pigeons, and there I was in the house with that guy with those ears. I was just petrified. Oh,
That was Harlan, I
was
suppose.
that? Oh, boy, he had.
Yeah, he was the oldest one.
Yeah, because,
I'll tell you a story about Wally. I think I know we were living in that house by the tracks in Nash. I think I was 5 or 6, and then he was, I don't know if he was babysitting me or what, but he was there anyway. He was cooking oysters, and he said, "Do you like oysters?" And I said, "No." "Well, you're gonna have some." And he threw me down the floor, and he sat on me, and he kept shoving those oysters down my mouth. He did. I was gagging.
Oh,
He
why
was so
you remind him
awful.
of it
He was
now.
awful.
He
That's
was
why
terrible.
I asked him if he liked oysters, and that's why he didn't like them.
Oh, just. And Phyllis, remember, didn't he take our dolls apart one Christmas? We hardly ever got real toys, you know. Daddy used to carve things out of wood for our Christmas presents. But one year, I can remember we got dolls. I think it was probably the first time I ever got a doll, and he took it apart to see how it was put together, and then he couldn't get it put back together again.
I don't remember.
I remember that.
I don't suppose any of you have any of those things that
He
your dad carved?
No, but
No.
don't you remember Daddy carving horses? And,
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, I wish I did have them.
My earliest memory of Lawrence is, you know, Lawrence liked to sing. He'd rock me, and she'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. And then to Adams West we go, or some song like that. But I can still remember that she'll be coming around the mountain when she comes.
Why do you like to play the guitar and hum?
Well, he liked to sing, so he'd rock me and sing to me.
I remember Arnie. He always had cars. He always had a car. And I always thought he used to walk around without a shirt, and he'd go outside in the snow just to sit, you know, he was, you know, so brave, you know, walk around in the snow and no shirt on.
Macho.
And he'd always, you know, and then I was kind of afraid of him, you know, he'd always grab me like this, and then
Yes.
he'd lift me up, you know,
Right
my
up to
neck
the
was
ceiling.
just stretched a
Yes.
mile, I think. He just
He
holds
used
me
to
like
do that
this.
to
and-
me too. No wonder my
Yeah.
neck hurts.
You
You know, he always did that.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I had my appendix out, I think I was probably 14 or 15, and I had just gotten home from the hospital, and he came out to Nash, and I was sitting on the hassock in front of the rocking chair, and he went and sat in the rocking chair, and then he pulled me straight back. I thought that was really funny. It hurt.
My first memory of him was when he came back from CCC and he had sunglasses on and I was scared of him.
Oh, he got cut up pretty bad there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Accident.
Yeah, we hardly knew them.
I didn't know at that time.
Well, they were much older than we were.
Yeah, they all
the
went to
boys.
CCC, and, you know.
So,
When we went through with Scott and Debbie in some of them, that one park out in Nevada there, Lawrence worked on some of them when I showed you.
I think that was at Zion National Park in Utah.
And I told him when I come back, I had some clippings of it, how he'd worked there. What CC built, you know, they built bridges, other places, rest of places and things like that.
So why don't we move ahead a few years then? And there were some stories told when Mom passed away about, oh, when you girls were in high school or going to school and things, and you must have some good memories of that. I remember there's some mention about Bill Janoschik. Who was he?
He was a friend of ours.
They were the younger girl's friend.
Don't you already have that on?
No,
tape?
not on tape. So let's hear a little Bill Janoschik story or something.
Wild Bill, he was one of the local policemen, and he kind of liked to get on the kids' case, you know, when we cruise Maine and stuff, and everybody was, well, not everybody, but everybody liked to play jokes on him, and they used to sit down on the corner of 5th and Hill. That's where the police car was parked, and then if somebody needed a policeman, a light would go on above the graft and drug, put on at the telephone office, I learned later. Well, anyhow, one time Bill was going to take off in his car, and somebody had jacked up the rear end, so he just revved her up, you know, and those wheels were just a-spinning. He couldn't get going.
But tell them about your encounter with him when you and all the girls were out drinking.
Yeah, was that north of town?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just probably about 6 crazy girls, and somebody bought us a 6-pack, I suppose, so we went out to just, you know, north of town, and we were just sitting in Holt's car, drinking our beer, and after here comes the cops. It was Wild Bill and then Johnson, and I had my brand new fur coat on. This was after high school, because I was working then, so I had my fur coat. And so they told us to get out of the car, you know, they come along with their flashlights, so we get out, and then these girls started pushing their beer at me, and I was holding it up underneath my fur coat, and pretty soon they started spilling, so my coat was getting wet, you know, so then I threw some underneath the car. And Bill flashed his light back there, and who threw that? And I said, I did, sir. Get in the car, you girls. So us girls got in the car, and he said, somebody told the truth, so I'm going to let you go this time. Next time you drink beer, go further out in the country. So he said, how far out do we have to go? Doesn't make any difference. The highway patrol will get you there. That was our encounter with Wild Bill. One of them.
What do you remember, Margie, about going to school? Or
Why was you such a good kid? There's nothing, you know, wrong
It
with
was
me.
the younger ones. We were
Yeah, it was
good.
all these young kids that, they used to tell me how they would hide their beer in the culverts. And
That was the boys that did that. Well,
No,
Lucy did
Lucy
that
did.
all the time.
See, and we
But she was at high school
I
then.
never did
Come
that.
back in here till then was skunk.
Oh, pooh.
Yeah.
You used to go to Ben Sells on your noon hour. Remember that?
That was,
They'd have a Coke.
yeah, we
That
just
was-
go
that
there and
was the
sit
bar.
and watch the others.
Oh.
Remember Lux, wasn't it Lux Johnson? Oh, remember she always was in there. I can remember, I remember her being in there, and there was a $10 bill on the floor, and she had gum, so she put it on her shoe and she picked it up. I can still see her doing that, so that's a good trick. You could do that in Vegas.
yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Yeah, I still remember her doing that.
All right, we've just had a little dessert here, and I said, what other stories should we hear? And Margie, you said, well, March 14th. What's that all about?
That's when they had a terrible snowstorm, 1941.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what my part in that. It was a Saturday evening, beautiful day, and I was babysitting Phyllis and Eleanor, and I took them. We walked up to the Nash store. And we bought Blackies. At that time, we loved Blackies.
What were Blackies?
They were candy, wrapped in paper. And we walked home to the house, and we just got in the door, and the terrible wind came. And the snow was ice was just plastered on the windows, and I was supposed to keep this potbelly stove going with, wood and coal and stuff. Finally, I ran out of that stuff, I guess, and so I took the kids down the basement. We sat down the basement because we couldn't hear the wind down there. And it was kind of cozy, wasn't it?
Yeah. We ate our Blackies, and we had angel food cake too, I remember.
Was it? I don't know what time of the night then.
Did you have lights, do you remember?
We did, yeah, we had lights the whole time I was there.
But I have to get this little bit in. For a while, we went up and down.
Yeah, that's true, we did.
And then we'd sit down, and then we were all so scared, and our legs we'd sit there like this, and our legs were going like this, and then we'd look at each other and get the giggles.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So,
we went downstairs.
okay, because what, your mom and dad were in
They
town?
went to Grafton was Saturday night to grocery shop. And Helen went along, I think, and Lawrence, if I
Yes,
remember.
because Lawrence and I went to the show.
Yeah, they went to the movie.
And Lucy was there too.
Lucy too?
In town. Yeah.
And so I stayed home with Phyllis and
And
Eleanor.
other words, Margie always had to babysit.
I did.
Why was Margie the babysitter?
Well, she just says
Because I was
that.
the best kid.
She was reasonable and cheap.
I wouldn't argue, or anything, I just said I'd do it. Well, then later on, I don't know what time, I guess it got pretty bad outside, because pretty soon here comes Elvin at the door. And he carried Eleanor, Phyllis hung on one side of him and I on the other. And they came to rescue us because it was a terrible storm, and Mom and Daddy had called him, I guess, because they lived in Nash at the time also, Al and B.
Okay.
And so and a bunch of men came in the car, Skid Oberg's car, I think, or Hank Munson. And Alvin walked from the road to the house and got us, and we walked out to the car with him and went over to B and Al's for the night.
And what they did when Al left the car, he took a rope with him so that he wouldn't get lost, because the wind was horrible.
It was awful.
It was terrible. There was Al and Hank Munson and Harold Jaster.
Wasn't Skid Oberg with her?
I just remember those three.
So how long did that storm last? Didn't it?
Just during the night, I think.
It's hard to say,
Next
maybe
week.
about 2 o'clock at night, 2, 3 o'clock
Yeah, I
maybe.
don't know.
And it was a snowdrift, so real high, it got to be about 20 below that morning. I know that.
But the day before, how warm had it been?
Oh, it was just a
the water was
mild,
squirting. I
mild
was
day.
hauling potatoes to Nash, the water was squirting out of ruts on the road, hauling to Nash, I could haul there's an open truck. And,
Because it was real calm.
But a lot of people died that
Yeah.
night.
Because they were caught,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to think.
what, on a Saturday night going to town and stuff like that, and then
Well,
caught in the
I
storm?
guess this
and-
storm had been on radio, people didn't listen like nowadays,
And
Didn't be able
if
to
Helen
come that
and
fast.
Lawrence hadn't gone to the movie, then they would have more than likely been
Been
caught.
caught in
yeah.
it.
Well,
And then also in 1941, December 7th, Pearl Harbor, I remember again Margie was stuck babysitting Eleanor and I. And Mom and Daddy and whoever else was gone to Edmore to visit some relatives, I guess. And then we hear on the radio where the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Oh, I can remember,
I
I
can
was
remember
scared,
that
I just
too.
didn't know what this meant, and Margie would say, oh, don't worry, they're not gonna come here, they're not gonna come here,
I was 12 years old, I knew
Yeah.
it all. Where was Helen that day?
well, where were you, Helen, that day?
I don't know. Were you
I
in?
don't know either.
I don't know.
I can remember one time in that house by the tracks, and us 4 were there, and I think Lucy was there too, and then We used to get bums, we called them,
Yeah.
because Mom would always give them food when they came to the door. But anyway, we were home alone, and then this bum came up to the house, and Helen said, "Come on, let's go up to the store." So the four of us left, and Margie stayed back to take care of the house.
Brave.
And she just went and pulled all the shades, and then she peeked through the shade at the bum. So we stayed in the store for a while, and then we went back home, and she said, "Well, he's gone now."
You just stood there and looked around, you know. Yeah. So you didn't try to get in or anything.
But Grandma fed the people when they came to the door, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they usually want a sandwich, I remember.
Well, you usually,
Yeah, we-
I usually give them something to eat.
Yeah.
It was fun living in Nashville. Golly, I thought that was fun out there.
What made it so fun?
Oh, because there were so many kids and we just created things to do. Everybody played together, and it seemed no matter, you know, the age didn't make
Softball
any difference.
games all the time.
But we just had fun.
Well, you know, my kids even had fun. Bert says those are his best memories, is Nash. You know, and I'm sure you'll hear about it when you see him. But he just thought it was great. So did Mark. Every time they come up, they have to go out to Nash.
I remember when they lived in that, Grandma and Grandpa lived, and I remember Grandma mainly in that little house, and then we'd have family reunions, or I suppose there on Sunday afternoons or
Yeah.
whatever, and we'd go out, or the kids would be out playing ball, or kickball, or baseball, or softball, or something west of the house.
Well, there won't be a ball
At the
game
ball
going
Yeah,
on.
it was right there practically in the backyard.
I remember we lived in that little red house by the elevator when we first moved to Nash. We had a train that would go through, it was called the Galloping Goose, you know? And remember the conductor, he would throw out bags of candy for us every once in a while.
What, was that in that scale house they called it?
Pardon?
Was that in that scale house they called it?
No.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I never heard it called that, but it could have been.
Yeah, there was
It
a
had-
scale house around there.
Yeah, you see, the scale house, that was it. Joe Thompson had that, the great potato house there. And then the scale, that's where the trucks weighed in.
No,
And
that's not
that's
where
where
we
Hank,
lived.
that's where Hank started up with selling beer.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but we lived on the west side of that Nash grain elevator, a little red
Oh,
house
yeah,
there.
oh, on the west side, okay, okay.
When we
okay.
first moved to Nash.
So where were the different places you kids remember living?
I remember living out at the farm, I can barely remember.
And where would that have been?
Where Richard Clemenson lives now.
Okay.
And then I remember, well, Nash, the two houses we lived in Nash.
So the little one I remember, the last one I think Grandma lived in Nash, and then this other one you were mentioning was closer to the elevator?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember living at Coppard's farm, don't you, Helen? Oh, I remember.
Kinda, yeah, because we walked to school there.
Well, I didn't go to school there, but
Well, I did, Wally and I did, 'cause
yeah. and
I know
Lawrence and-
Wally'd always go early and save a little red chair for me because they all saw girls would always take them. So he'd always go and get one and save it.
Was this true? I remember a story they always told about Wally, when he was supposed to stay after school one day, and then he stayed long enough to hit the teacher over the head with a broom, and then he left. And then he got expelled.
I never heard that.
Never
I
Mom
heard
telling
that,
me
I
that.
heard it was a bat.
Ugh.
And then I also hear stories about him, he'd never wear a jacket in the wintertime.
Yeah.
He always, never
Oh.
wore a jacket.
Or if he did, it was a denim jacket.
He'd take off, we'd walk home on the farm from school, and I think I was in the first or second grade, and he'd always take off his coat and put it on me if I wasn't riding the sleigh that the dog came on, you know, to haul us home once in a while. He had a
And then
dog.
another story I heard about him was how he used to have that dog that would, I don't know, sit and wait for you to come home from school or
Yeah,
whatever.
we'd
But
come
one
to
day he
school
took it
and-
out skunk hunting, and the
Yeah.
dog wouldn't go through the culvert, so he killed it.
Yeah, but that dog used to pull us to school
It was
on a
terrible.
sleigh, and then the dog would go home, and then the dog would be back there when school was out, and we'd go back on the sled.
Until Wally shot it.
Yeah, I remember that, she wouldn't go hunting with him, so,
Oofta.
she was awful.
I remember Mom telling me, once I walked home from school out in the farm, and I got in the door and I just fell down.
It was all wore out.
Well, walking a mile and a
Been wore out
mile
ever
and a
since.
quarter. Just a little kid
What were you wore out from?
walking. So probably in the winter time, you know.
Well, didn't get wore out.
Yeah, but I was the littlest one then.
Oh, God.
There doesn't seem to be much sympathy, Margie.
I know. I always get the grief.
And when we were young and lived in Nash, they didn't have a school in Nash proper, you know, we went to Farmington District 51. That was about 2 miles from Nash, and we had carpools. The dads would take turns, you know, having their week to drive us to school. I can remember walking home only one time. It's the one-room schoolhouse,
And then when Phyllis and I went to high school in Grafton, most of the time in the wintertime, didn't we had a rented room, you know, in someone's house? And, you know, like just a bedroom, and then I think we had kitchen privileges.
Yeah.
And one time, I can remember one year we stayed, I think maybe 2 years, we stayed with Betty and Dolores Johnson at Carl Lane's house. And Betty and Dolores used to fight like crazy.
You know, all the kids did that in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember,
Yeah, you guys did that.
we stayed at Evers,
Yeah.
down Evers, you know.
So you went to school, but you were away from home
Yeah.
during the cold months.
Yeah. But I know when we lived out at the farm out at, like where Clemenson's are, we walked, because I remember Wally had the mumps, and we stopped in at Joanne Walston's on the way home, and she wrapped them all up, and we walked home again, yeah, all the way home then.
Yeah, I think we stopped there a lot to warm
Yeah.
up and with cookie or mustard sandwich or something.
Yeah. And we go.
We just ate a
Mustard
piece-
sandwich?
Piece of bread and then put a
They're
little
good.
butter on, put mustard on.
Tried
Yellow,
it,
yellow
it's really
mustard.
good.
If the Raleigh man
I
was
still like
around
that.
selling mustard, he'd brag about how good that was on the sandwich.
Yeah, oh, I remember eating
He had
them.
good mustard
They were
too.
good. I still like mustard.
I did
I do
too.
too, on a fresh bun.
Yeah.
I like
Oh,
mustard.
I remember Mom made fresh bread, that's what we'd eat.
Oh, that's something I remember about Mom. When we went to country school, almost every day that we came home, she'd have
Fresh bread.
rolls made, cinnamon rolls, every day.
Wow.
And then she'd make, I can remember in the red house, and she'd make all these loaves of bread, and they'd be laid out on the beds. There were so darn many of them, you know. Oh, I've never seen so much bread, no.
Wasn't it 30 loaves a week she used to make?
I would imagine, feeding
Wow.
all of us.
Well, I remember that dish pan, like, it was about like this, and it would, she'd put it on the chair, and she'd probably have quilts over it, to keep it warm. Well, she just had stacks and stacks, don't you remember that?
I could, yeah, now that you mention
Sitting in
it.
the corner there.
Was it a washed up?
Well, it
Big
was
dish
a
pan,
big,
big
yeah,
dish
big
pan.
dish pan,
Yeah.
you know, and it was deep, and that thing was full.
She used to do more work in one day than I do in 2 weeks.
That's what the cooks would bring the lunch out to the trashing crews, and big dish pan, they were about that big around.
Mm-hmm.
Sandwiches and donuts filled.
Well, sure,
No,
they,
that's twice a day they had to do that, plus the other meals.
yeah,
You know, they had to go steady.
they worked steady.
I remember going to Grandma's apartment north of the high school in Grafton here. I think was the last apartment she had before going to the Sunset Home. And I'd tell
Oh.
Debbie she'd send me into the closet in her bedroom to bring out this big round tin that was
Yeah.
then full of krumkaka.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Did-
'cause it would be cool in there. and-
Did she, I mean, when you were growing up, would there be krumkaka around like that too? Or?
Oh,
I remember going to, what was her name, Grandma Harvick's?
Hannah.
Hannah Reynolds, and we'd go upstairs, remember? And she had this big old trunk, and we used to go up there and we'd sneak it.
I think
had
she
it
had
to-
it there because she knew we'd go up there
I
and sneak
suppose,
it, you know.
but remember,
Yeah.
we'd sneak up there.
She
and-
had sun buckles, that was the
Yeah.
best part.
So
But
Debbie,
that's
when
where
you
she
make krumkaka, then what do you keep it in now?
It goes within a day or so.
Really?
Yeah,
It isn't kept.
it's consumed
You can
quickly.
freeze that too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Okay.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
But in a
that-
tin can, would,
Okay.
you know, would be good.
Oh, that's good to know.
I remember.
Same with krumkaka.
I remember going to Grandma's. I'd go there after school sometimes if there was something at night, and she'd fix supper for me. And I remember one time I was sitting out in her living room there, and then she asked me to go into the kitchen to get her colander.
Oh. Yeah.
and I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. And but I said, yeah, I'd go get it. And so I'm looking around the kitchen, and then I thought it was one of those straining things. Well, I couldn't find that, and then I realized she was talking about her calendar, but she called it her colander.
Oh, really?
So,
Did she write everything down just like Phyllis does?
probably more than Phyllis, or maybe not as much as Phyllis. But, you mentioned Grandma. I've heard it said Herwick, and then I've seen Hervick. Was it Herwick, or was it Vick?
I think it was W.
W, I think.
But you know, Norwegians, how they pronounce W.
Yeah, that would become Vic, yeah. But I'm looking at a picture here, and she's in the middle, and I think it's Grandma Orsund, Anna holding Gary, I think. And then in the middle is Grandma Herwick, who was Iverson, right? And then remarried after her first husband died. And then next to her is Grandma, or Millard Hovey's mother, Magna Munson Hovey. But Debbie was commenting, I don't know if you remember Grandma Herwick well, but Debbie says she looks like a tough lady, like, strong and...
Stern.
Was she's...
Didn't see
Yeah.
her smile very much.
No.
Mom didn't get her laugh from her.
Yeah.
No, she was
She was, I was always kind of
pretty much
scared of
straight
her.
ahead.
Yeah.
She wasn't any fun at all.
She, I remember when Grandma Herwick still lived in Nash, and she'd say, well, she always claimed she couldn't see well. But then she always knew who was at our house, which is, a good city block and a half from where she lived. She always could tell what was going on there. But she couldn't see well.
But she looks like the picture, she looks
Yeah.
like a stern,
Yeah.
tough.
You've never seen a picture of her smiling or anything.
You never
Probably
know
had a
she-
tough life. I mean,
Yeah, she probably
when
did.
she came.
You never know she was related to Alfred.
Yeah.
He took the most of the way up.
It's kind of funny when you were saying that about her. I remember Iverson, Mom or Grandma's brother, and in his later years too, supposedly he couldn't see or hear,
Right.
and yet it seemed like every time we'd go visit him, he
Yeah.
heard pretty well and saw pretty well. And
Yeah. He even went for a ride. He could
Oh, yeah,
see over there.
He's seen more than.
Oh, yes.
But I think what he was getting at more, he couldn't see. What's the reading part?
Yeah.
And things like for driving and
Yeah.
couldn't see good enough.
Because I remember going to Lawrence and Dorothy's, and he'd say, well, look at that farmstead
Yeah.
over there, where...
Yeah.
what do you remember about Ivor and Pearl?
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
They were just a lot of
Many
fun.
good times.
No.
Pearl, well, they both laughed a lot. Pearl always had stories to tell.
Yeah, she had lots of them.
Dad, I think you were telling about a special dress that she wore once.
Yeah, well, see, the mandatory, we had dances out in Mant there, and it was in the winter time, of course. There was always maybe a time or two you had a hard time dance, you see, and
Yeah.
you dressed up a little hard, in poor clothes, Pearl, gee, 100 pounds potato sack, that fed her just right. Just let out the bar, fell over there, and the length was right.
Yeah.
And North Dakota, not going North Dakota potatoes. Just a slit on each side.
Yeah, because a cobbler
Of course, they didn't have no
apron.
sleeves on it.
Just-
Yeah, man, that was the thing we did when we were little. Every summer there was a Mant picnic.
Oh,
they
yeah,
called it.
4th of July a lot
Was
of
it the
times.
4th?
for many
Oh
years,
man, that was the big
The whole
thing.
community was there.
So what made it so special?
Oh, there was ball
Oh, yeah.
baseball. Baseball was the
Yeah.
All kinds of
entertainment.
games.
And then kitten ball. The girls played
Yeah.
kitten ball.
And the
Which is
kids,
softball.
would
And then
have games, different
The
games.
the men would have a tug of war across the river. And then they'd have a program at night, and Eleanor and I always sang Sentimental Journey.
Uh-oh.
Did you really?
I thought we saying you are my
I
sunshine.
think we ought to sing
No,
it
it
now.
was Sentimental Journey. Because I can remember one
In
time.
the 40s?
We thought we were so good.
Didn't have a
We
part.
thought we were so cute.
Yeah.
We didn't worry about the singing. I remember Maisie and Carol Allman. They, of course, they sang just lovely. They could harmonize, you know. I mean, they had the music in them, and they always sang too. And Helen and I were always glad when they were behind us. We were before them on the program.
I don't remember that. Do you?
They'd sing
Do
on
you
the
remember
park there,
that?
you know.
Oh, I
But on
think,
the dailies, yeah, or would say, but
Yeah.
off the hall, you know. And I remember, well then, it was getting pretty late at night, well then, I guess some of the men figured they should harmonize. Can you write it for one of them, where they were singing.
I remember Lawrence and Kenny Rutherford and Jim, I suppose, and somebody else. They would always sing
Yeah.
at that man thing.
Oh, yeah.
They'd always sing, does the bubble gum lose its flavor on the bedpost
Spearmint
overnight?
blues, its flavor on the bedpost
Yeah,
overnight.
they always sang that.
Of course, there was 14 sheets in the wind, I suppose.
Oh, sure. Sure.
I remember I went to my first public dance at Mant with Helen and Buster. I don't remember if Margie and Joe were with. This was after you guys were married, because I remember George Barda's orchestra was
Oh,
playing.
yeah.
That was the first time I ever went to a public dance.
Did you dance?
Yes, Pally was there and we danced.
Oh.
Who is Pally?
Pally Barda, one of George's little kids that we used to babysit.
All right, I remember Dad talking about how people, or it seemed like everybody around here would have a nickname, and you were telling Debbie and me yesterday, I think, about a guy, I forget where he was from, but he ended up with the name Post Hole.
Yeah.
And how did he get that name?
Oh, he worked for Dailies out there. Well, it was, you know, the farmers were out there. And then, any little rainy weather, well, they had cattle around. And fence, you know, you dig post holes, you know. Well, Walter Vaikulis was his name. That was his right name.
What was his name? Walter?
Walter Vaikulis.
Vaikulis?
But, well, some of them couldn't remember these names all the time. And Henry Munson was along. He was helping the fences. And why don't we just call him post holes? That stayed with him all the time.
And they did, they seem to all have
Yeah.
nicknames, like Skin Oberg.
Wait now, who?
Skin
Skin?
Oberg.
What's his real name?
Well, I don't know.
Fritz.
Fritz.
Yeah.
But Alvin never had a nickname though, did he?
Maybe didn't dare call it.
No, he was so big.
Wasn't my mom's nickname Tootsie?
Yeah.
Tootsie, yeah.
So
And
did
then
you
there
have a
was-
nickname, Helen?
Did I know? But Wally was lame brain, and then George Ihus was Dirty Dick.
You
And,
know how he got that name?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, because you know what, Halloween time.
Oh,
the
yeah, when
big
he
deal was
moved
to
the outhouse.
push over an outhouse. And one time George fell in.
Yeah.
So that's how he got the name Dirty Dick.
But what was Lob Bailey,
Yeah,
Lob? What was his real name?
Francis?
How did he get Lob?
I don't know.
and then the other one, Rufus Daly. Rufus
Yeah.
Daly, that was, yeah, Rufus was, I don't know if I know any other name of Rufus.
When
And
Phyllis,
Spike, that was Ardell, I think, Spike.
Yeah,
Daly.
Spike Bailey. But Squint never, they all, well, they,
Squints. That
Squint
Squint.
was his name.
Squint is his name.
Squint?
Quentin. It was
Squint.
Quentin.
Quint.
So it's
Yeah.
Squint and Lob and Post Hole
Oh,
and
yeah, Skin,
Skin,
Dirty Dick,
Dirty
Lame
Dick.
Brain.
Lame
Phyllis
Brain,
was in high school, she was called Fizz.
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 How did that come about?
I don't know. I don't know.
She was a pitcher for the Nash Pacers.
Oh, really?
Pitched
Were
ball.
we the
But Scott, do you want to hear a good name?
Yes.
There's this Ralph Fawcett is his name. He lives in Arizona in the wintertime. He was married to Henrietta Dolan, and his nickname is Spigot.
Spigot.
He even has that on his license plate.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Fawcett.
Did you have a nickname, Eleanor?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
But it seemed like
Ellie.
all those guys at
Ellie.
Nash had the nickname.
Yeah.
You know, all the guys around Nash had a nickname.
I guess in high
Like,
school I did have a nickname, they called me
Clint
Lena.
Rutherford, that was Speed.
Speed?
Speed.
Speed.
Yeah. He died before
I
he
can't
was pretty
remember, I just.
hard driver, but he had diabetes and he got killed on the swatter, you know, tipped on over.
The only thing I remember that Skin Ober, he was so
Yeah.
tall and
Skinny.
skinny.
You know, wasn't he married to Verna Anderson?
Skin,
No, we're
Oh.
not,
No.
Well, he got married, he got married.
Oh, Hagen?
Yeah, before, you know, he died pretty quick.
Oh.
But, you talk about Skin Oberg, no, that other Oberg, what was his name? Dewey Medgarden, we got such a kick out of him. I forget what they called him, his name. Anyway, he lived on a farm. See, all the potato houses in Nash around at one time or another, they all had a potato crew during the winter time, you know. They're smaller crews. And Oberg, Shorty, yeah, he went by his name Shorty.
Shorty.
And he worked for Mint Gardens.
Shorty Ober.
Yeah, and
Okay.
he come to work, Dewey says one day, and he was a little bit late, but come to work, and he said, yeah, he said, my wife found the cistern, he says. Found the cistern. Yeah, he says, and it was plumb full, he said. No, wait a minute. Yeah. Well, Dewey said, did you have to clean it out then? Oh, we couldn't do that. He said, it was plumb full, he said.
God.
And once they got her out of there, put the cover on.
Oh, Shorty, yeah.
Boy, he got a kick out of that. It was plumb full, he says, they couldn't do that.
Couldn't waste that water, no.
Ellie, what did you say your name was in high school?
Lena.
Lena. Where did that come from?
I suppose, I don't know. Don't know.
All right, we're going to kind of wind down here so we can give you the rest of the night off. So we're having a family reunion on Saturday. It'll be the 29th of July? No, 27th. Do you remember when the last one was and where?
1981 at L&B's on Prairie Lake in Pelican Rapids.
Was that north of Pelican Rapids a little bit?
Yeah, I think it was
North
north.
of-
59.
It's 1981, so it's been
21 years.
21 years. So a lot has changed in that, and we're expecting quite a few people out at the golf course in beautiful Grafton, North Dakota. Any last words tonight as we wrap up this little historical?
Just rest up tonight for the big party at Margie's tomorrow night.
Oh, you're invited to my house
A
tomorrow.
pre-party party?
Pre-party party.
A warm-up.
What time will the festivities
You can come
begin?
in anytime after 7.
Okay.
Eat supper first.
Yeah. We should have no problem with that. I think, though, there'd be one appropriate way to end this, and Phyllis, we need your help, because that would be a special song.
Yeah, but Scott, I thought I'd save that.
Well, this will give you a little practice.
I wouldn't have to repeat it.
Well, it just depends how many other requests there are. But I think it was a song I first heard a couple months ago, and you said the name of it was the Walsh County Jail Song. And what's the history behind it?
Well, I don't know, I don't even know where I ever learned it. It's just something that,
Isn't that how
I
the
don't
boy
know.
used to sing it? You said you used to sing with him.
oh boy,
I don't know, somehow.
Tool and I used to sing this song, I
Yeah, the sound we're hearing in the background is mosquito spraying. So you're not exactly sure of the origins of it,
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I have no idea, I just,
but the meaning behind it is,
well, just poking fun at Janosik and Johnson, the two local policemen at the time, you know.
okay, and you were in high school at the time when this song came on?
No, I think I was out of high school. when I
Okay.
learned this one.
Well, why don't you favor us with this rendition
I'm not in the best of voice, but I will do it.
for
I
historical
I hope
purposes?
I don't forget for historical purposes. I'm not gonna strum my guitar.
No.
I'll just
Okay.
get it out, okay? Okay. I was sitting on the corner, not doing any harm. Along came Janosik and he took me by the arm. He threw me in the box and then he rang the bell. Along came Johnson and he threw me in the cell. About 4 o'clock next morning, I gazed around the hall. Bed bugs and the spiders were having a game of ball. The score was 2-0, the spiders were ahead. The bed bugs made a home run and knocked me out of bed. At 6 o'clock that morning, they rang the breakfast bell. A couple old potatoes, so jeepers how they smelled. The coffee tasted like tobacco juice, the bread was old and stale. Oh, give me back those good old days in the Walsh County Jail.
All right.
Oh, golly.
Well, thank you for reminiscing tonight. And we'll have
If
more.
you made an album, you know, a little back ways. Now,
Better bring that tomorrow night when you come.
It's called your royalties coming.
Yeah,
You gotta
yeah.
have light though, I don't have a good light.
So this is Kirk Kennedy, Margie's son, and Kirk came over here as the I don't know what I'm going to say. The other stories were ending, and
Yeah,
Kirk has a story
administrator.
to tell about Bill Janoshik.
Bill, the classic one I remember about Bill was he stopped a car from Illinois.
Yeah.
So he'd asked to see talking to the people and what they're going, their speed and stuff, and he said, well, where are you from then? And then we're from Chicago.
Yeah.
If you're from Chicago, how come you got the Illinois license plates then?
You can't fool me, he said.
Yeah.
You can't fool me.
Yeah, I forgot all about that one.
Oh.
And what were you?
You know, there's another time, well, I know some of the participants involved, but the movie American Graffiti, where they jacked up the car off the, actually they tore the axle out of the car. Well, they did something similar in Grafton on 5th Street in Maine. You remember where the police used to park right off the Main on 5th Street and watch the speeders go by? Well, one night, I don't know if it was Bill or not, but one of those fellows was sleeping in the car. So a couple of guys got out there and they sneaked up behind the car, and they jacked up the rear axle off the ground and blocked it up so that the rear wheels wouldn't have any traction. Then they drove around and they took off the headers on their lake pipes so that the engine would really roar and rumble, and they went flying by there about 35 miles an hour and then let off on the gas, so it just roared. It woke him up, so he, of course, hit the lights and dropped her into gear and get going. They actually did that in Grafton.
Yeah. I remember. You know, Bill used to have a morning show on the radio too. He'd give the police report.
Oh, really?
Remember that?
No, I don't.
Oh, yes.
I suppose
I-
I do it.
Yeah, he'd tell about what happened the night before. I remember one time he was out in the Westerville vicinity. I don't know what he was doing in the Westerville vicinity, but he said he was there anyhow.
That's where he's from.
Yeah, that's right, he was.
I can remember one night, I was kind of in a little accident, and then he gave our name. You weren't
Yes, I
there,
was
but he
there,
gave
too.
my name. And oh my God, Lawrence was calling Mom.
Yeah,
and
we
everybody was
were
calling
coming
Mom.
home from that dance in Warsaw, and
Warsaw.
somebody,
We were
were
sideswiped.
turning left and somebody hit us, and
Yeah.
they took us all up to the police station. They took down all our names, and then the next morning, yeah, it was on the police bulletin.
That's
There I was sitting at work, and Mom called, and,
Yeah.
you know, wondering, oh my
That's
Lord.
when, I think I told the story before, but I remember I was with Lloyd Durand, and we had been at this wedding dance, and Lloyd was an attendant, and so that's when they wore the white sport coats, you know. So he had that on, so we were up at the police station, and Wild Bill said, "You kids been drinking?" And we all said no, except Lloyd said, "Well, I had a few." "Well, were you in the wedding party?" "Yeah." "Oh, that's okay then."
I think it was Helen Kay, married to Frank. She talks about the time that she and her girlfriend came home from a dance in St. Thomas, and they crossed the tracks on 8th Street, and I don't know if they were driving quite fast or anyway, but anyway, Bill Janoshik stopped him, and another cop was with him. And I don't know what it was, something
they
about
didn't
being
stop
out.
at a
He said,
stop
"What are you
sign."
doing why are you out so late anyway?" And they said, "Well, they'd been to a dance, and what are you stopping us for?" "Well, you went through that stoplight back there." And the other cop looked at him and he said, "Bill, there's no stoplight back there." So they just let him go.
Yeah, he used to say to us, "You young punks, you think you can get by with anything."
His brother, Jimmy, was the fattest kid in North Dakota there for a time.
I bet you he was
I don't know how much he
Yeah.
weighed,
Oh, I believe
500 pounds.
They had that special
Yeah.
seat in the Strand
Yeah,
Theater.
yeah. Mhm.
Actually, had it in the very back row, they had an extra wide seat for this kid.
Remember on Saturday nights when we all went to town, and I remember walking Main Drag, you know, and then Janoshiks would always have their car parked, and then that kid would be sitting in the back seat, or whatever it was.
Yeah, I have a book on North Dakota history, and he's in the first chapter.
Really?
Jim Janosik, or yeah, Jimmy.
I used to go
In
to-
Washington DC,
he
they
went
say
to Saturday school
Janusik,
out there when
don't
they
they,
had
Scott?
Christmas programs.
Yeah.
Do you remember we went to visit the Janusiks?
Yeah.
See it.
Janosiks?
Yeah, there was some relative of Helen Siemens that was supposed she'd never seen them in her life, but we had to go visit them. There was a retired judge.
It must be tough.
Oh, he was a judge.
They thought that Scott was a politician. I think you were working for Senator Andrews at the time, and I think they thought that you and Debbie were, you know, partners or whatever. And oh, they were fixing us lunch, yes. And the maids, it was the maid's day off, and it took them forever. This woman and her adult daughter, took them forever to set that table up, you know, because the maid was off.
Was it worth waiting for?
I don't remember.
Probably
China
not.
and all that stuff.
Where's
but
this Phyllis?
in Washington D.C.
Oh.
one time when Helen Sieben and I were out there visiting, we went and converged on Scott for a weekend, and he had to put up with
It's
these
fun.
Janosiks. They didn't say Janosik, they said Janosik. I suppose they were probably her third cousins or something.
That reminds me, did they ever call Knutsons around here Knutsons?
It could be Knudsen, yeah.
Because it's the same spelling, the Kuntsosen, in Phoenix, it's Knutson.
Oh,
Yeah, police
yeah, well, you know,
officers.
you remember Knopf?
Yeah.
Knopf?
No,
When he played professional football, they always said Knopf.
yeah.
They never said Knopf like we say.
Must be the Norwegian. Knopf. Just kidding.
Oh dear.
So Kirk, do you have any good memories of this crew, or?
I suppose there's a few, but I can't dredge them up.
Very
right
few.
now.
Yeah.
Very few, yeah.
What were you saying about Miles Jaster had stopped by and he remembered going over to Grandpa Orsund's?
Yeah, he mentioned, I told him to come over to the reunion because being from Nash, he's probably just as much an Orsund as the rest of them will be there. But he recalled when he was a kid, he'd go with his dad, Harold, to Grandpa Pete's and watch the fights on Friday night TV since Pete had a TV. And apparently wasn't many TVs in town.
I wonder why we had one.
I think we're the last ones to get a telephone.
Five, okay? They roll that. Side, chest. 2, 3.
Good looking in that crowd there. Look at them.
Bigger smile.
Pretty nice.
Is Shauna? She coming tonight? She coming tonight?
Green, go back in, Green.
How big of a
Jason!
I'm doing some price check for you. How big of a one?
You wanted a big grill. You were looking at
Remember that, huh?
All you guys squealing down there.
You got a good memory. All right.
You know.
Sometimes it's too damn good. You're not even good swimming.
Okay, one more coming. Mafsa.
Run 1 or 2 rifles.
Couple. 6 minutes. Okay, I got Okay. And this would be Kelly Green. Oh, yeah. I was wondering what color that was. Okay, what color now? Okay, what color? Is it all yellow? There's Mrs. Is that everybody?
Take a couple pictures of each group over. Good job.
Here's two yellow. Is that it? Wow. Don't. He's bigger, quick. Hold my head back. Anywhere. I want to get one more of this camera.
There's a red lock and a wheel. Right. Get away from there.
Look at this big steel.
There's still two more coming.
23. There's still some coming. There's still one guy. You got broke at Christmas time? Yes, I did. Okay. Right. Go. Count of 5. Everybody want to smile? Maybe it's who hasn't moved up here? Dark blue, come on. Do it now, quick.
Can you guys get closer together? Don't you have any more?
Hold on now. Okay, I'm 5. Let me get out of here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Y'all see the pieces? Okay? Okay, I'm done. I'm done. I'm ready. You're done, Paul? Colin's done. Where's your camera? What'd you do with it? Oh, you got your camera.
Your grandma. Where's your little guy? Now we need purple. Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Purple. But you don't think purple. Purple. Yours, little baby. Purple. Purple. Purple, Gabby.
Find your waistcoat. Wear your purple, please. Buster!
Yeah.
That's it? 5, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, just like trying to press this little button. Right, it has to shut off. Oh, okay.
Like everybody.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I thought I felt something on my hand.
The movies, this ought to be a big goddamn picture here, yeah. It's done.
Okay, everybody's got a smile.
Turn the baby around.
Everybody take pictures. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Gail, does it automatically advance?
It should. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Families inside air conditioning as well. Yeah.
I still have time. What's the look like?
Look at the money bag.
Smile like you're having fun. That's the cover. Oh, thanks, Colin. No wonder I couldn't get nothing. Hold on.
Here we go. Smile.
Oh, Tony, a record?
Feeling, yeah?
Huh? Okay, I'm
So make a promotion, use the back door, and you get out.
Sorry.
Chase it. Back of the line.
Days before I forget.
This is, I don't know if you meant Bert.
Yep, last night.
George, Bert's kid, Heidi's, Green, and
Yeah, we know her. Yeah.
Eleanor. And then Pat.
Got to
over
get you
here.
on camera too.
Pat keeps moving behind you.
Yeah, we saw Pat.
This is Heidi's boyfriend. This is Pat Lavelle.
All right.
The Hendersons,
That's right.
in short.
They're so close. You're so sweet. You want to eat outside? Right there.
Okay, here we go. All right, okay.
It's gone anyway.
Isn't she sharing anything? No. She's pulling it away. Picture what she's eating.
So Kelly and Kevin are the first ones at the feed day.
They're fighting.
In the air? Kill us. We're trying to cure it.
Give it back. Not enough.
We're going to wait in there.
She gets a cigarette there every once in a while.
I tried to turn it out. Didn't really think good until after lunch. Once you realize you worked all the way up.
He wasn't laughing.
There's these people.
Last summer. Each summer, you have an opportunity to sign up with a different function. Last summer, I worked nights with they call it smooth pavement, repairing roads and whatnot. It's the best time to use at night. This year I'm just doing work for the traffic services. It's a sign shop. We go out and repair signs, put up new signs, take down.
Which color is predominant?
Many different areas.
How did you get ahead? There you go.
I just went up there and got
That looks acceptable.
Oh my God, that's a set of
I see him 3-4 times a year. He's a client of mine. He's over in the community. He's like a little what do you do for a living? I'm a securities consultant. Yeah, oh yeah. How to film and you didn't know him. You just met him. Oh yeah.
It's pretty good and chewing though, without the
Yeah, he's
If I was mayor of Grafton, I'd be buy everybody a Coke.
You could be.
Tonight, anyway.
Pastor Scott.
Not here.
Where's Scourge? Oh, Margie's right there. No, Margie.
Yeah, look over this way.
Hey, look that way. Think about that potential job offer.
Wasn't expecting that here.
Well, you never know. You never know. Our church, we lost our pastor.
because that was actually neighbors.
What do you want?
Seeing how good looking you are.
Oh, I can second that.
Is this before and after the sermon?
Is it good, Helen?
I'm done. I think I'll add my last name. Since I'm
Scott, you're cheating.
I'll get her. I don't think I had you on camera earlier. Say something profound.
Philosophical?
Yes, that'd be very good.
Well-meaning, and I don't know anything like that, though. It's just... Beth, she's pretty philosophical.
Check the food in my teeth. Can't smile. I probably have a big hunk of green in there, so. And nobody will tell me, like Jasmine, Smith walks on. We'll do it.
I saw that big sign they put up on the freeway, national champions. This is what their national champions up. It just says national
You look great.
feeding our faces. There's always meal time.
Gotta get up early tomorrow and go to church. This gentleman right here is gonna give us a sermon. I think Pastor Terry's long-winded. You just wait. You get your holding time. Do they have any interesting? How was your bar though? Was the bar good? Where are you going now? You came out here just to visit with me. My own flesh and blood. You run. Oh wait.
Oh, yes, better go. See you guys.
Bye. Bye-bye. I'll get your camera back.
Okay.
Wave.
This is your grandma and your great grandma. This is interesting, Scott, to see that they spell it Pater here, and on a lot of the written stuff you see it's Peter.
Is it with a T?
With a T.
What was
She's 97 years old.
Yeah, wasn't that something?
No, she was 97 when she died. Pretty impressive.
Oh, Larry's dead. I don't remember.
Yeah, he was 73. I didn't think he was that old when he died.
Yeah, I had thought at one point
always
he
thought
was
he
in
was
his
early
60s.
That's saying he was 73? I was a baby daughter that died. She was a year old. Your great-grandmother had 13 children. 12 children
Smile, Carrie.
survived into adulthood.
I like that as much as my mother.
This is a baby girl that died at the age you can see. She was only a year old when she died, 1922 to 1923. I'm not sure what she died from, but probably crib disease or something of that nature, or pneumonia. That's a different family name there.
Oh, hello,
Are you taking
Scott.
us live Norwegians?
Only 6 years old.
I don't care if I'm stepping on it. Man, step on that, Michael. My son's on a big one.
Pearl and
I got the
That's fine. Come on through.
You're gorgeous, you don't need to put it on film.
But it's documented now.
I got you, exactly.
Yeah, they asked my wife, so I said, you give some.
Everybody's going their own way now, just get
Yeah, I said, well, I said, I probably paid for it, but I said, I let her pick it out. So she did the rest of it, she found some things. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's so much good with it. You take this.